Welcome everyone to this week's SonRise Sunday School. I'm not quite sure what's going on with Mr. Peter. He seems to be really masked up this week, but I think we might find out later on in the lesson. So this is the fourth Sunday in January. This month seems to be going by very quickly. Usually January seems to drag along, but not this one. So I hope you didn't get blown away by those high winds and strong winds this week. It was a bad hair day every single day, I think. And now we have the rain, which is good. So let's jump right into this week's lesson, where we're going to look at yet another person in the Bible who was guided by God. This time we're going to be in the New Testament. Now, there are many people in the New Testament who were guided by God. Can you think of any, Mr. Peter?
I can think of one, Miss Kathy. How about John the Baptist?
That's right. That's a good one. John the Baptist. I thought of Peter and Joseph and even the wise men. But who we're going to look at today has perhaps the most amazing story of any of them, besides Jesus himself. Have we got any guesses? An amazing story in the New Testament. Somebody guided by God? It's the Apostle Paul. We're going to look at the Apostle Paul. Now, when he first shows up in the book of Acts, he isn't called Paul. What's he called, Mr. Peter?
Saul of Tarsus, Miss Kathy.
That's right, Saul of Tarsus. And he wasn't quite the godly Christian character you might expect. In fact, quite the opposite. Saul was a very devout Jew, which, what does that mean? Well, he followed all the Jewish rules, commandments, teachings, and practices to the letter. He did everything right. He studied the old scriptures, he could quote them, was always trying to learn more about them and be a better Jew.
Was he a Jewish radical, Miss Kathy?
I think he might have been a Jewish radical, yes. He was all about religion and thought all Jews should try to be as perfect as he was in following the Jewish law. You know, I think he was a very smart man, don't you? Yeah, I do. But from what we can read, he was on his way up the ladder of success among the Jewish leaders in the temple. He had a very bright future ahead of him. Now, in and of itself, there was nothing wrong in following the Jewish laws and wanting to worship God in the old traditional ways. But what had happened to Saul's heart in all of this focused learning and desire to stick to the rules no matter what? Mr. Peter, what do you think?
I believe his heart got hardened, Miss Kathy.
That's right. He actually lost sight of God completely. There was nothing heartfelt about his worship of God. It was all laws, 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 and rules, rules, rules. That doesn't sound like a very fun way to live, does it? So here we are in the book of Acts with the birth of the new covenant of Jesus Christ and a new religion springing up all over the place. A religion where people were joyful and giving and loving. There were no set rules, just Jesus' command to love God above all else and love your neighbor. A religion where the followers or disciples talked about a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. It was fresh and exciting, and it offered hope and purpose. But can you imagine what Saul thought when he watched this movement beginning to grow? No, this can't be happening. This goes against everything in the Jewish religion. This is going to be a disaster for the leaders who answer to the Roman rulers. This has to be stopped. I have to do something. Saul was determined to stop the spread of Christianity by any means possible, even if that meant throwing people in jail or threatening to kill them. Anyone who proclaimed to follow this new way should be punished. I'd say at this point his heart was really hard, wouldn't you? And he definitely wasn't guided by God. So Saul got permission to travel to a town called Damascus, which is sort of north and east of Jerusalem. He went with the authority of the Jewish leaders to imprison anyone, men and women, who claimed to be followers of Jesus, and he was going to bring them back to Jerusalem. Well, how many of you know what happened next? Come on, it's one of the most dramatic events in the Bible, and there's plenty of dramatic events in the Bible. What happened, Mr. Peter?
I believe you got struck down by lightning, Miss Kathy.
That's right. He got hit by lightning as he was traveling, and it knocked him to his knees. Well, I don't know if it was actually lightning, but it might as well have been. It was so bright and so strong of a light. Well, who was that light, Mr. Peter?
That would be Jesus himself, Miss Kathy.
That's right. And he spoke to Saul with such authority that Saul, first of all, calls him Lord, and secondly, does what he is told, which is to travel on to Damascus, where he will be given instructions as to what will happen next. But apart from actually seeing and hearing Jesus, what else happened to Saul once he stood up? What did he find?
He found that he was blind.
That's right, he could not see. I wonder, what was God's purpose for doing that? Why would he blind him? Well, I've also heard that people who can't see sometimes have heightened senses in other ways, like they can hear things a little better than maybe we can, those of us who can see. So we're going to try a little experiment, seeing as Mr. Peter here hasn't been able to see for this whole time. I'm going to give him some sounds and see if he can guess what I'm doing. Are you ready?
Ready, Miss Kathy?
Ready. All right, here's the first one.
Do it again, Miss Kathy. Oh, that's a knife sharpener.
All
Be careful,
right.
Miss Kathy.
That's
Sharp.
good. I know. All right, he got 1 for 1. All right, let's try this one. See if you get this one, Mr. Peter. I can do it. Here we go. I can't do this one again.
Okay, Miss Kathy, that sounded like a match being lit.
There we go. Very good. All right, 2 for 2. What about this one?
It's a trash bag, Miss Kathy.
Not quite. I'm crumpling up foil.
That's foil, Miss Kathy.
That's foil. All right, what about this one? Let's see if I can do this one. Can't blow it up.
Miss Kathy, I know exactly what that is.
All right, well,
You're trying to blow up a balloon.
I was trying. Trying was the word here. All right, here's the very last one. All right, you ready?
I know what that is. It's my favorite soda pop, Miss Kathy. That sounds like an A&W root beer.
That's an A&W root beer. There you go.
Diet.
Diet. Yes. All right, well, you did pretty well. I think you got
Thank you,
4
Miss
out of
Kathy.
5. That was pretty good. Did you kind of hear things a little clearer?
What? Yes, Miss Kathy.
I wonder if during those 3 days of being blind, Jesus showed Saul in his mind, or perhaps even spoke to him, about this new religion and how it was actually a relationship with God rather than a bunch of rules and laws. Without the distraction of being able to physically see, perhaps Saul was able to understand better exactly who Jesus is and also what he expected of Saul. That's one of the questions I'm going to ask when I get to heaven. Whatever he learned during this time, it changed his life dramatically and forever. From then on, he was completely sold out to Jesus, and nothing was more important to him. So, Mr. Peter, was Saul's life all hunky-dory from then on? No trials or suffering? No difficulties?
Miss Kathy, he became a Christian. Christian life isn't really that easy, Miss Kathy.
Sometimes
it is joyful, but sure is not easy sometimes.
That's right. Sometimes it is hard. And Jesus actually told Saul what he would go through and how difficult it would be at times. He experienced that soon after his amazing conversion. The devout Jews in Damascus began plotting to kill him. Talk about the tables being turned, right? And Saul had to escape in the night, hidden in a basket and lowered from the city wall. Not exactly a hero's exit. And I wonder if Saul was thinking, okay, Lord, I know you told me things were going to be difficult, but really? Now? Right away? But he was prepared to go through anything because of his love and devotion to Jesus. Well, what else did Saul change, apart from his whole life?
I believe he changed his name, Kathy.
That's right. Interestingly, the name Saul is a Hebrew or Jewish name that means asked for or prayed for. Perhaps his Jewish parents had prayed for a son, asked God for a son, and that is why they named him that. But the Roman or Greek version of Saul is actually Paul. Well, why would Saul start to use that version? Mr. Peter, what had Jesus revealed to him?
You was small, Miss Kathy.
Well, it was small, yes, but he had revealed to him that his ministry wouldn't be to the Jewish people, but to the Gentiles, everyone else who wasn't of Jewish heritage. And the name Paul would perhaps help them relate a little bit better to him. And you're right, Mr. Peter, the name Paul does mean small or little. So here we have Saul, who was on his way up the ladder to becoming an important, well-known Jewish leader, now willing to be called little. It shows the impact Jesus had on him and how he truly wanted to walk humbly with his Lord. You know, from the moment of his meeting with Jesus on the road to Damascus until the very end of his life, Paul was devoted to God and guided by him in everything. Sometime perhaps we'll be able to look at his missionary journeys together and talk about the adventures that he had. He certainly didn't have a boring life, that's for sure. He was dedicated to bringing the good news of Jesus to anyone who would listen. And we have the wonderful benefit of his teaching, his advice, and his example of how to live an amazing life if we let God guide us. Well, that's our lesson for today. You know what would be a cool thing this week? Maybe sometime go outside if it's not pouring with rain and just sit and close your eyes and see what you can hear. Mr. Peter, what might you hear if you were to go out in our garden and close your eyes?
I'd hear the hummingbirds buzzing around, and I'd hear the toads toting, Miss Kathy.
That's right, and sometimes the doves, and sometimes we can hear the hawks, but you can hear them so much more clearly when you're not distracted by everything else around you. So just give it a shot this week and see what happens. All right, well, have a great week. Stay dry, and we will be back next week with another lesson. So take care, love each other, and we love you, and God bless to all of you.
Bye, kids.
Bye.